Clay Nunley talked about his first job at Wright State and what he had to do as a assistant at Wright State.
Yeah, Wright State was. I started off as basically what was my official term was graduate assistant manager. This was at a time when GAs were kind of they weren't in existence, and so um, but that was basically what I was. I was in grad school at the time, but I was really there to be a part of the program and be an extension of the staff and really begin to learn about what it means to be a college coach and how to grow and in my role how to help the program.
As a GA, how much do you really get to learn? And as a GA, how much did that, when you become a head coach, how much do you put onto your GA so that they will learn and it's not just a glorified gopher?
Well, I think how much you learn depends on the situation. I think every situation is different. I was very lucky, as I mentioned earlier. I was with some great coaches, and so they really, I got a lot of responsibility. Hopefully, I showed I could handle the responsibilities I was given, and so that allowed me to get more. And I grew from that, but it was fun for me. I mean, the worst part of the day was when I had to go to class. I was in the MBA program, and the classes were all in the evening. So I'd come in the office at 8:30 in the morning, and we'd get to work and be in the office all day, and then go to practice, and then practice would be from 3 to 5, and then after practice at 5, I'd head to class, which for me was it was the disappointing part because I enjoyed what I was doing in the office, but it was good for me because it was reassurance that, I thought I wanted to get into coaching, and I was finding out for me that was something I was enjoying.
Now, two quick questions. When you're in the office, what are you doing? Just normal, scouting, game planning, stuff like that?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, the young coaches of today, I joke with my assistant, he's a younger guy who does a great job for us. But this day and age of synergy has made life so much easier, so much more efficient. That was back during a time when you did film exchange, and so you had to send out uh, form letters to all these different teams who played common opponents that you had on your schedule and request a film from them. And then you had to send them a blank videotape that was labeled. And then you had to send a return UPS slip with it. And, you're always, if you had a team that played a game on Saturday and you played them on Wednesday, your head coach was waiting first thing Tuesday morning for the tape to arrive UPS and wanted to know, if you knew where it was and why wasn't it there on time, if it wasn't on time. And sometimes you had to drive long distances to track tapes down or trade tapes. And it was just different.
Now, are you
It's a lot more
guaranteed a
efficient.
yes from the other team or?
No,
Okay,
you're not. You're not. I mean, common practice was that everybody agreed to it unless it was a
sure,
league opponent. If it
sure.
was your league opponent, you weren't going to trade tapes with somebody out of conference. But otherwise, you did that for the most part. But that was a big responsibility. A lot of editing with your own film, whether it was practice or game tapes. There'd be a little bit of recruiting, maybe some mailings, things of that nature, and administrative stuff that would go on.
And again, when you're doing all this stuff like editing and everything back in the day, as I like to say, it's not as fun as it is, or it's not as easy as it is now. Well, you talked about talking with your
It's not
assistant.
even close.
Yep,
No, I mean you got basically deck to deck, and so it's like if you have to put together a scout tape on a team, you go through and you watch all the different game films and you write down the counter numbers, and then as you finished up viewing everything and evaluating, you organize your counter numbers, and then you go back and you put the tapes back in to find the counter numbers, and one play at a time, you're basically deck to deck recording. So it would take, gosh, I don't know how much longer it would take then than it does now, but it considerably. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, 3 to 4 times longer to put together a scout film then than it does now.
I think I may understand the pain of the counter numbers and everything like that more than the layman would, just because if you haven't grown up with it, you don't understand what a, I don't want to say pain, but what an event or what a
It's
task that
tedious.
could be.
It's
Yes,
it
100%.
Yeah, it's tedious. If you want to do it right, it was tedious. And then, if you do the film and then you realize that you forgot a clip to put in there, you're done. Like you either got to do the whole film over again or you just add the clip at the end. Versus now it's so much more advantageous. You can just, of course, with the beauty of technology, you can just slide the clip in wherever you might have left it out.
Is the proper term Army or West Point?
They most of the time they like to be called West Point. I think it's specified, exactly who they were. But I mean, some people call it Army. I mean, at the time when you
Well, what do you
play
call
games, you'd be listed as Army. I call it West Point. I think people know what you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, when you played a game, your score, your name on your scoring bug was always listed as Army.
Right. I don't care about good graces except for yours at this point in time. So, how much
It doesn't
did
matter. It doesn't matter to me.
how much did West Point teach you in terms of being accurate? Because we talked about the tediousness. If a military academy isn't teaching people to be disciplined and accurate, I don't know what it's there for, type of thing.
No question. The one of the greatest lessons I took from my time there was attention to detail. Like how critical every detail is, and how the difference between success and failure is very minor. It's a very small fraction, and so every detail matters, and you need to be tied in. And just using the recruiting process as an example. I mean, the recruiting process at Army is unlike any other. Army, Navy, Air Force is unlike any other recruiting process. I mean, it's if every other recruiting process is 4 or 5 steps, which is basically, watch the kid play, learn about the kid's background, get to know the kid from a communication standpoint, have the kid visit, decide whether to offer a kid a scholarship. At Army, I mean, you've got to get the physical with Dodd Merb. You've got to get the application process, which is a whole extensive thing. You've got to get a congressional nomination. You've got to obviously get the visit set up. I mean, it was a lengthy 10, 12, 14 step process. And if you weren't in tune to the details of the process, you were going to screw something up. So that being an example of how detail oriented you had to be in your approach to things was a good lesson.
In your eyes, what is being late? LATE.
Uh, yeah, I don't think it needs to be complicated, so to speak. I mean, I just think like if what we tell our guys, if we say study hall starts at 3, that means you're here ready to get started when it hits 3. It doesn't mean, you're rolling in the door at 3:02. It doesn't mean, you're kind of getting ready once 3 o'clock hits. I mean, like if we're going to start at 3, we're ready to go at 3. If practice is at 2, you're not, rolling in, still stretching out at 2 o'clock. You got in here early, you got in here loose, you got your pre-practice work, you got a little sweat going, and 2 o'clock hits, we're ready to hit the road at, whatever, 55 miles an hour. So, when the time comes to do what we're supposed to do, we're ready to do that.
Has that always been you, or did Army teach you? Because I have a feeling Army/West Point, 5 minutes, if you're on time, you're late, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is, but I think that's probably been part of my personality all along. I mean, I wasn't very talented, and so I was able to at least be smart enough to realize, look, if I better not beat myself, because I'm not good enough to get away with beating myself. So, I mean, if you can't be on time for something, you're in essence beating yourself. And so things like that hopefully resonated with me to understand, like, if I have any chance to be any good, or to play in college, or to do the things I wanted to try to do, I better be really good at the stuff that I had control over.
Did West Point shape your morals, or were you always that moralistic before you hit the service academy?
Well, I mean, I've been shaped by a lot of people, both before and after West Point, and then while I was at West Point. So I would say there's a lot of people who have impacted my life, starting with my parents, and continuing on to great mentors that I played for and worked for. And so I wouldn't say it was West Point as much as it was the people that have impacted me in my life.
Because when I first met you, I felt you were much more matter of fact. Now, I'm not sure if it's because I know some mutual people that played for you that you become looser, but I mean, do you feel like you're more matter of fact in terms of if you don't know the person?
Good question. I don't know. Hopefully I've continued to evolve, because you're going back 20 years now, which is scary to think about. But
I still
yeah,
have some of
hopefully
those
I've
early interviews
evolved.
if you want
Hopefully,
to see them.
what's that?
I still have some of those early interviews if you want to see them.
Oh, I'm sure they'd be scary to look at, but and depressing too, because I'm sure I would be reminded of how much more hair I had and how much darker it used to be.
Me too.
But yeah, I just think hopefully I've I've evolved, and there are things that you learn about, and you hopefully grow with, and you continue to get better at. And try to master the best that you can, whether it be as a person or as a coach. And I mean, when I first started, I was 30 years old
Right.
at Randolph, and you're 30, and you don't know what you don't know. You think you're going to conquer the world, and you have this great grandiose plan in mind of how everything's going to fall into place, and then you start to learn and realize, what, just stay in the moment and do the next right thing, and then work forward from there. So yeah, hopefully I've just, like any of us, we want to make sure, we don't want to stay the same over 20 years. We hopefully are getting better and growing.
And I wasn't saying it's a bad thing at all, by the way. So,
Right.
in your world of coaching basketball, do you need to make it as the people in this locker room are a family and everybody else is a foreigner?
Well, I think you need to build a connectedness with your group. I mean, that's our number one core value in our program, and to us, we define it as investing in something bigger than yourself, done by being a servant teammate. And so, obviously, you have to be able to prioritize, and you have to be able to place a value on certain relationships, and understand that in order for the team to be successful, the group in the locker room has to be connected, and outside noise has to stay on the outside, whatever that is.
One more question
So,
before we. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, no, that was it.
One more question before we get into some random name game type stuff. How hard was it to recruit in terms of Randolph versus West Point?
Well, I think it was probably the parallels were that you had to overcome some challenges. They were different challenges, but West Point may have helped me a little bit with that. Just try to being creative and anticipating things you had to kind of navigate. But then at the same time, there were some things that I probably did not anticipate well enough. That first class, which was the Cam Shepherds and the Pete Hamiltons and the Tim Clarks. One of the things that I didn't anticipate was you bring them on campus, and you talk about all the great things that you think can possibly happen over the course of their next 4 years, and what you really like about them as a fit in your program and so forth. But then they get on campus, and we weren't co-ed yet. I mean, the first class of male students hadn't arrived. So they're walking around a campus that's an all women's college still. And like they don't see anybody that looks like them. And so it's really hard for them to kind of visualize, like, how do I fit in here? Like, where's my place? And so like there were challenges like that definitely made it harder to try to be ready to have to deal with from a recruiting standpoint.
You talked about the word creative. What does that mean in terms of recruiting to you?
Well, you have to maybe find ways to communicate things effectively that the prospect can understand, what your vision is, or where you're coming from, or how to look at a certain situation in a certain way. Maybe not a situation that they may view as a negative. You're trying to help them to see maybe it's like there can be a flip side to this coin, and there can be a positive to this. So I think you just have to try to make sure that you're being thorough in how you think through things, and sometimes that means you have to be a little bit creative in how you present yourself.
What was the most common question you got for those early years at Randolph when you were recruiting?
How accepted would the males be on campus? It was newsworthy when the school went co-ed, and you had some alums who were upset, and you could understand why they were upset. The school was changing, but the reality was it needed to change. It was changing from a standpoint of survival, and it wanted to continue to grow and prosper. But in order to do that, it was going to have to reinvent itself and become co-ed. And so it was a necessary change, but one that, if you went to school there when it was single sex, you appreciated the RMWC identity, and so I think that was understandable. But that was how would people receive males coming into onto the campus and into the community was the most common question.
Final question about recruiting before I get into names real quick. Do facilities how tough are facilities for you? Because at Randolph, you have one side of the gym. I personally like that kind of one side, but it's got to be hard as a head coach to recruit. Facilities, how much do they play into recruits?
Yeah, they play in. I would like to feel like, hopefully we can present a program that gives them a lot of reasons beyond just the facility to want to come there. And hopefully those reasons really should be probably a little more important. The facility is great, but at the end of the day, the people are going to impact your experience. The culture is going to impact your experience. The degree is going to be really critical. Like there's a lot of reasons why you need to be looking at an opportunity that are going to be more impacting to your life than what the gym is like.
Right. What's the biggest
But
thing about facilities that people are interested in when they hear the word facilities? That a recruit,
uh,
is it
I
where
don't
they
know if I
play or
could
the
really.
locker room or stuff like that?
It probably depends on who you ask.
Gotcha. Okay.
But obviously at Roanoke, we're very blessed. We have one of the best facilities in the country at our level. So when you can show them the arena, it makes an impression. Randolph was the other end of the spectrum. You had to, I mean, we tried to get ahead of it. We would tell them well in advance, look, we play in a very small gym, but here's why we like it. And going back to the creativity question you asked me earlier, we had to explain to them like, hey, this place actually don't envision it right now while you're in it and there's nobody here. What you need to understand is when we play home games, and we had some home games that were packed. It's easy to pack the place. It only seats 400 people. So when we would pack the place, it would get loud and it would not be a fun place for opposing teams to play. And I don't think there were very many teams that had a lot of fun coming and playing us at Randolph, just because it was a different feel. I mean, everything was right on top of you. It was older, it was smaller, and I don't think it was a fun place for opposing teams to play.
For a radio guy like myself, sometimes phone is the best way to do an interview, but you hate to interrupt anyone, especially a guy who is telling stories and has the knowledge of a Clay Nunley. If Coach Nunley wants to punch me, I'll let him, but hey, he's from the Army, so he could probably really hurt me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding about he could really hurt me. But I don't think he would, because Clay Nunley is one of the most generous, kindest, classiest men you will find in the world. Always enjoyed talking to him, always enjoyed covering him. And I will be covering the Maroons as well as the rest of the ODAC throughout the year. It's one of the best NCAA conferences, let alone Division III conferences around. You'll hear more about them, the ODAC, and the Maroons, and more on the Sports Buffet podcast with Bob Alvis.